Hey, what's going on, YouTube? All right, here we go. We're talking about UFC 268. I've got it right here. UFC 268 predictions and analysis. That's what we're doing right here. And it's going to be big. It's going to be big. I like the action. I like the action. Paul, we're joined by Paul at Villarreal here, PFV. And listen, I think this is going to be a much more interesting fight than a lot of people are thinking. It could even exceed the first one. There was a lot of build up on that. I know I've seen some predictions out there that are saying, hey, Usman's gotten better and it's not going to be close like the first time. I don't know that I believe that, Paul. I'm going to give my take here in 1 second. What is your take on it?
Look, I agree with that. The first fight was close. I think the scorecards were basically even through the first 4 rounds before Usman was able to take over the 5th. But Colby Covington's a very good fighter.
Tough.
Best fighter.
Very tough.
And you can't take anything away from him. Nothing. Usman is a machine. He's great, but you can't undersell Colby Covington.
You can't undersell Colby Covington, number one. Number two, I think he's got a different strategy coming in on this one. First of all, I want to ask the audience out there how the sound is. Let me know where we're at on the sound level here, because I'm seeing one thing on the feedback here, and I had this mic set up almost perfectly, so I just want to make sure that we've got the right sound level. So let me know out there what how the sound levels are out there, YouTube people. Okay, here's the thing. I'm going to get right to it. I think that Colby Covington is executing a different strategy on this one. The common let me set the table on this one. The common discussion right now is that, hey, Usman is a better striker now. Look what he did to Masvidal. Look at these recent fights. And sure, Colby beat Tyrone, but Tyrone's really hasn't been that great anymore. I'm not fully buying that. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you look at that first fight, in my opinion, that was either tied or that was Colby Covington's fight until he got hurt. Now, the 5th round was definitely very decisive. And you got to give it to Usman. Usman has been winning, and he finds ways to win, for sure. But if you look at the weigh-in and you look at the UFC embedded, as I did, then I think it gives it a different. Here's what I came away from. And again, I'm the MMA expert. It's been a while since I've covered MMA, but I used to train a lot of pro athletes. I was a national champion in lifting. I was very, very good at wrestling. It's not about me. This is about this fight. But you can check out, and I've got tons of playlists and interviews with all kinds of MMA people, etc. Here's my take. I think that Colby Covington is coming in lighter. I'm maybe not on the scale, but let me put it another way. I think he's really worked the cardio, Paul. I saw him, he didn't look super pumped up. He looked in shape. He had his suit on. He never took his shirt off. I think this guy's coming in ready to hit a pace. I think he's going to try to break Usman with the pace. And that's kind of what he's always done with the chain wrestling and the striking and the kicks and all that. But I think he's going to do it even more. And I think he's made some commentary to get into Usman's head. And look, you could see Usman pushed him Dana White was right there, and Dana White reacted. Usman pushed him at the stare down before the weigh-in. The weigh-in, they kept them apart. And, there's been a lot of heat. There's been a lot of discussion between these two. It's gotten personal. There's always hype in a fight, but this looks like it's gotten legitimately personal. And in my opinion, and I think, first of all, our personal opinion only, not alleged any facts, not casting this person, all for entertainment purposes only. Please check disclaimers. I think if I have to make a prediction, and I will hit the analysis here. Look, if you ask me to pick right now who I think is going to win, I'm going to have to say that Kamaru Usman have to win. If I have to make one pick, hey, this is it. Because Usman hasn't, he's been on a great streak. He has the striking. He has the strength. He has the takedown defense. But I think there's a lot. I mean, and I say this with all due respect. I think, I don't want to say there's necessarily holes in the game. I think there's holes in the game, but I think there's holes in the athletic conditioning, in the athletic total package that he's bringing to the table. And it's kind of like, remind me of there's a lot of fighters. I don't want to name names because then you go down that rabbit hole. But there was a lot of great fighters where if you listen, Paul, you test the gas tank and it's not there, there's all kinds of problems. Look, that was Cain Velasquez's big strategy, right? He would just push a pace that you couldn't deal with. Joe Calzaghe did the same thing in boxing. And so I think that Covington is trying to rattle him. I think that and then remember, here's the other thing too. You can have the absolute greatest, there is no 100% in anything. This is a fight. A fight's a fight, right? Anything can happen. And so, maybe Covington had bad luck the first time. Maybe he's going to get good luck this time. That's what a lot of people are saying about Rose Namajunas. And we'll talk about that fight against Wei Ling. And so, if it wasn't for the head kick, then, but it doesn't go like, that's true and not true, right? So meaning that you can't take anything away from Rose and you can't take anything away from Usman. At the same time, that doesn't mean the same thing's going to happen again. And if it doesn't happen that way, then what? So I guess what I'm saying is, bottom line for me is I question the stamina of Usman. I also question the mental setup. I think that in terms of, here's what I mean by that. Usman's a great champion. I do think Usman's going to win. If I had to make one prediction, I would think that Usman's going to win. But I do think Colby Covington's gotten to him. And that is part of the path for Covington to win. So I think Covington's coming in with the advantage on the mind game aspect of this. Paul, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I could see that. I haven't studied the various things. I did see the weigh-in, saw a little stare down at it, and I haven't watched so much of the build up to this, so I can't really comment on all the little things. But Colby is good at getting into people's heads. Colby is a confident guy, and again, he's a very good fighter. So it only takes one little thing to shift the whole fight. So there's no doubt that this isn't it's not like Usman's fighting a tomato can here. This is a really good opponent, and so anything can happen in those types of fights.
This is right. This is the thing. Is that here's what gets me on this. Everyone, Masvidal, and Masvidal is great. Covington by far, in my opinion, was and is the greatest test for Usman. Okay, that's it. So why wouldn't we want to see this again? It's no different. Listen, we just saw the Wilder, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury fight, and this was in some ways the third fight was more definitive. At the same time, it was a fight. It was a serious fight, and Fury was in trouble at one point and got dropped. So this is what I'm trying to say. In my opinion, now, if they had to fight another 10 times, I think Fury would probably win, 7, 8, 9, even 10 out of 10. That doesn't mean he's not in danger in every one of those fights. That doesn't mean that Deontay doesn't have a chance because he's got such power. So I think that, weird things can happen in fights. We've seen that before. We've seen people, get injured. We've seen all kinds of stuff. We've seen people get caught, get clipped. We've seen all kinds of stuff. I think that Colby Covington, now it could be that Usman's hit a different level. It could be that Covington gets exposed. It could be all of that he's figured it out. He's made the adjustments. That could all be true. But I just have the feeling, looking at this and analyzing it, I think that the adjustments that I see that Colby Covington has made is I think that he's gone for a more leaned on the cardio. He's more in shape. I think he's playing the mind games, and I think he's going to play a fast pace and a technical game. That's kind of what I think. So I would say, to me, I favor Usman, but I think that this is, Covington is extremely live in this fight, and I would probably put it, if I were making a just prediction, I would probably say 60, 50, 60, 55, 45, 60, 40, something like that for Usman. But I think that people that think it's just going to be much easier, I don't know. I don't see that. Here's the other thing. When have we seen Usman in tremendous recently in any kind of problems? If that happens, things can change. Look at what happened with Joshua versus Ruiz, right? And then and in a lot of ways, same thing with Wilder. Everyone's unstoppable until they're not, and then they can all change, right? So I think, what do you see, Paul? What's your prediction on this? I think this is a tough one. I think this is much harder than people are, some of these analysts are putting out there. I think this is a much harder deal.
Yeah, look, I like Jorge Masvidal a lot. I think he's a good fighter, good dude from everything I can tell about him. He's not as good of a fighter as Colby Covington.
No way.
So it's like, again, it's like, yeah, he's right, the Ben Askren and all the other stuff, and he's tough, and he can punch. Okay, he's not nearly the level of fighter that Colby Covington is. I agree with you totally that this is as tough of a test as there is for Usman. You think he's going to win it. This is as hard as it gets. The only other guy I think that people are starting to mention, maybe a showdown with Usman, is the new guy, Chimaev. I don't know about that. Chimaev's certainly been very good, but it's like, outside of him, and I don't even know, he still has to step up in class. For sure, Colby Covington is the toughest test for Usman.
Well, here's
any doubt about that. So it's like, this is a serious opponent. This isn't just going to be a walk in the park. Now, look, could Usman come and get him out in the round?
Of course.
But so Colby can hit him too. Colby was tied in that fight through 4 rounds. That's what the scorecards were. This was a competitive fight. I'm sure Usman's improved. I'm sure he has.
Here's the other thing.
Colby hasn't improved.
Right.
So of course.
Here's the other thing, and this is, I think, very important, aspect of it. According to Covington, Usman didn't want this fight. And in fact, a media person, reporter was asking about, Canelo and all these different fights are being set up with influencers or boxing or different matches. And listen, whatever the fans want. And if I was a professional, I understand people trying to go after money and interesting opportunities to gain audience or different, a bigger audience, for sure. But my point is this: if Usman doesn't want this fight, how much does or did Usman want this fight? That's something. That's an important point right there. You could have the greatest, fighter in the world, when they don't want to fight or they're not into a fight. Same thing with football. Any of these contact sports. That can change the whole situation right there. So if Colby's getting to him, if he didn't want this fight, he's told at the press conference, he told, we're talking about Canelo and Dana, and he was answering the question was for Dana, and then Usman answered it. So I think there's a mental aspect of this. Now that may not come into play if Usman just is so much better, or Colby gets clipped and it ends earlier, then that's fine. But where this can come into play is if Colby frustrates him, extends him, starts winning some rounds, then, again, like Joshua, who knows what, or Wilder, who knows what's going on. Some of these fighters, even champions, can only fight going forward, can only fight when they're ahead. It's a different game when they're behind. You see what I'm saying, Paul?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's the front runner guys. I mean, it's plenty of guys like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I don't know if Usman is that or not. I mean, to give him credit, the first fight was a very competitive fight, and he was found a way to do it in the 5th round. But like you said, maybe he didn't want this fight. It almost reminds me. It's not the same thing. I won't say it's exactly the same thing, but it kind of reminds me. It's like Golovkin versus Canelo. Those are competitive, even fights.
Right.
And, I mean, a lot of people, of course, thought, Golovkin won the first fight, even though it was at the score of a draw.
That's an interesting comparison. That's an interesting comparison.
Canelo did not, a lot of people think Canelo didn't really want to fight him again. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's a hard fight. It's going to be a hard fight.
It's a hard fight. And how much pressure is really on Covington now? I mean, some, but how much pressure is on Usman? Massive. Massive.
Oh, yeah, much more.
Massive.
No doubt about it.
Massive.
This one's supposed to be like the Terminator,
Right.
Yeah.
This is, and it's in NYC. You had Halle Berry there at the weigh-in. You had, and all the stuff with the personal stuff. And that may be exactly what Covington's trying to do. Maybe he's playing a character and all that. And that's, I mean, Usman was saying some different things, but Covington may be trying to step up the mental, and then in the octagon, in the fight, may try to step up the physical pressure on Usman. And if Usman doesn't want to be there, could get interesting. And it reminds me of McGregor, right? And so, when Nate Diaz stepped up the pressure on McGregor, that, the first time didn't work out so well. When Khabib stepped up the pressure on McGregor, didn't work out so well, right? So when Poirier stepped up the pressure on McGregor, he could talk in the press conference and everything's cool. Everything's cool while it's cool. But when it's not cool, then different thing happens there. Now, do I think that Usman is more composed than that? Yes. Do I think he's a better champion? Yes, but it's when, who thinks that McGregor, and he's a great, listen, McGregor's a great athlete and a way better businessman. Business person, definitely not knocking, the Mac life. All right. I'm not knocking McGregor by any stretch. You know what I'm saying? So I think he's played his cards phenomenally, as a business person. But when he left the UFC to fight Mayweather, who can tell me that he's been the same since that, let alone this new, you know what I'm saying? Like there was a mentality, even after the loss with Diaz, there was an aura about McGregor. It just isn't the same. So, and again, Jose Aldo, a monster until you're not. Now Jose is coming back. So I don't know. I'm not saying, and it could go both ways. I mean, maybe there is a different level now that for Usman hit. And this has gone longer than I wanted to go, but because this is difficult. I think I see what Covington's trying to do. I think it could work, and not unlike Tyson Fury. If you've got better technique, if you've got a better cardio-based gas tank, even if you're facing someone with physical skills, maybe more power, maybe more whatever, if you can get in their head and you can take them into deep water, all kinds of stuff can happen. Because if they can't get there with that power, if you can get them down, the takedown defense doesn't work, then what, right? And I think to some degree, maybe not unlike GSP, Usman really relies on that physicality. If he gets in open space, that doesn't work, or the gas tank's not there. I don't know. I think there's a lot of interesting aspects to this. Yes, I favor Usman, but I think this is a very, very live, interesting fight. I'm going to go with Usman, but I'm going to be definitely very interested to see what happens. And I think I would not surprise me if Colby Covington wins. And I think I can see the strategy that Covington's is looking to employ, I think. And look, it could definitely be successful. So if I have to pick, I'll pick Usman, but I really see this as almost an even pick'em fight. Paul, your final thoughts on that fight, and we'll hit the other ones.
That's pretty much where I'm at too. Like I would, if I had to really decide it, I'd pick Usman, but Colby is very much right there, and if he won, I wouldn't be surprised. So it's I would not be shocked. They both look in good shape. Definitely, as you said, Colby looks good. Yeah, I mean, it's he's coming to win. There's no doubt about it. And I think he feels like after the first fight he could have won. So there's
right.
No reason for him not to feel like that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I exactly. And if he wins, it's so much.
He wins, it'd be unbelievable.
Yeah, right.
Everything's fixed.
Right.
So he's absolutely.
Here we go. We got some comments here. Hawker, oh my goodness, how long has it been? What's going on? Okay, Hawker Mustang is the favorite, but I'm rooting for Colby.
That's going, man.
Oh yeah. How many hours until the main starts? Well, I think we're really almost like it's about 22 hours away thereabouts, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
Yeah, we're about there. Okay, so it sounds like Hawker's kind of where I'm at. Hawker seems to be like, he thinks Usman's going to win, rooting for Colby. Look, I definitely, would like to see Colby win. I think that would be cool. I think, I really respect both of them. They're both great wrestlers, both great competitors. Definitely, it's I just analyze that, and I do agree with Usman on that. Usman says that, I know he respects me, and I respect him, and respect his game, and it's like that's of course. And listen, it's a promotion. I think that to me, like if listen, from a business standpoint, it would be so good for business for the UFC if Colby won. I mean, how much it's like McGregor, right? But it's a different version of it. And it just, you could, I mean, I'm sure like all the, I don't want to get into all the politics stuff, whatever, but I mean, but he was hitting that hard. I mean, he was talking about de Blasio and Trump and I mean, you would get all that type of stuff. It would be, and then he's here in Florida and Miami. So, but Usman's a great champion, and it's just so interesting. And there's so many different aspects of it. And that's really what makes a great fight, right? And is all of there's so many different layers to it and stuff. And I think that they're both good professionals, and they're both helping to sell the fight. So yeah. Okay, now let's move on to Rose versus Wei Lang. Colby wins. He could probably bring back. Right. Yeah. I think right. Hawker, I agree with you. I think all that stuff starts. I mean, who knows? He's going to do something. He's going to do something, right? And there's all kinds of things that would happen there. I would expect to see him on TV. I would expect to see him at appearances, and all kinds of stuff happen on that. And then it's like, well, who's he going to fight? Or the trilogy. I'm sure that we would see the trilogy for sure. There's so many different things, so many different ways that could go. For sure. So I think that, Covington, this character, the heel character, he's kind of an anti-hero, almost like Stone Cold, kind of, sort of, I mean, I can see different things there. So yeah, I think, and Gaethje was saying, it's like, listen, I don't know. You never know, right? You never know how much, because we're on the outside, they're on the inside. You never know exactly how much is real and how much is selling the fight. And I'm not alleging one thing one way or the other. But not unlike McGregor, I don't think there's not a lot of times there's never a full appreciation. You want to keep things respectful, obviously, and legal and ethical, moral, and all that type of stuff. But someone like a McGregor, someone like Covington, someone like they sell tickets, they sell pay-per-views, in my opinion, and that's what it all comes down. Now you can have someone that does that, that's really low key if they're amazing, like Fedor, right? Because Fedor has that, or even a Brock. Well, Brock can obviously has the persona, but then Brock can just go and do and less so. What Brock does in WWE, he didn't really do in UFC from a persona standpoint. Am I right or wrong on that, Paul? I think I'm right about that, right? Yeah, or we're talking about that next. Hawker, we're talking about that next. That'll be a separate video. We're going to talk about Canelo and Plant. That's very exciting. So we're doing double duty here. I want to have this as a standalone. I'm going to go over a couple of the other fights here, and then we'll stop, and then we'll redo. We're going to talk about Canelo and Plant. That's a really interesting fight too. I'm very excited about that.
Just hit me that one more time.
So I look, Brock, you can sell pay-per-views and you can get interest from fans if you're not, have that over-the-top personality, but you have to be you have to have an intent. You have to be an amazing athlete and have amazing presence. So, I mean, Fedor had amazing presence. Brock has amazing presence. Now, Brock didn't act the way in UFC. He was way low key than he did in WWE. But the WWE character was that base and fan base was already built, right? So he didn't really need to do it. So I think, but for those examples, someone like McGregor, someone like Colby Covington really bring something to the Masvidal. And there's another one. So bottom line is, whatever it is, you need to give fans a reason to watch, right? So that's the thing there. Okay, let's shift. So we all see it sort of the same way. Leaning Usman to maybe even, and I think it's very interesting. So now let's talk about Rose versus Wei Ling. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I don't have my glasses on right here. So that's a very interesting fight. Wei Ling. I think I'm gonna go with Rose. I think she retains, but this really is a pick 'em fight, in my opinion. This is a tough fight because we didn't really get we didn't get enough data. We didn't really see enough of that first fight. What we did see is that Namajunas is extremely capable with the kicks. We see that it's live. I think she's going to come in with confidence, but I think Wei Li's actually very focused. I mean, that's going to be very interesting. Paul, how do you see that one?
So a couple things. One, Wei Li is shorter. That's the biggest limitation for her. She's shorter, smaller, less reach, this type of thing. She's unbelievably good.
Yeah,
so good at
what
she does. If she can get at you. Yeah. The thing with Rose is, Rose is somebody who is just she's so underestimated. She always does better than what you think she's going to do.
Yes.
She fought that Joanna.
Yeah.
She's going to get crushed, but boom, she didn't get crushed. She turned it around. It's like honestly, when this first fight came up, I'm like, Wei Li's going to crush her. But it's obviously it didn't happen that way.
Rose is very technical, has more power than you think she has. Definitely is very mentally tough, has a lot of grit. But also, what I like about Rose is, and I don't know if this gets talked about as much. This is maybe me and Russ. I like her positioning. She seems to have really, very good transitions and really seems to be aware of where she's at in the range, right? And I think much more so than a lot of fighters like a Ronda Rousey or something like. And Ronda was great at what she did, but it was, you know what I mean, kind of like a Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson kind of, he knew where he needed to be. Well, the best obviously is Habib. I mean, just, it's like a blanket, right? Constant. But I mean, but But I think unlike Khabib, who's much more very very wrestling focused, Rose can do it with the striking as well. Now Weili, or sorry, Zhang, I think high horsepower, very strong, he does it all, right? And so I think that you're going to have to be able to evade that and contain that, right? And if she's if Weili's not caught, then what? It's going to be a long night. So that's a very very interesting fight. It's a very very interesting fight. I think that is a super super close fight, and it wouldn't for what. So I mean, and this is like for some crazy reason, I think we might see a decision in that fight. And I could be wrong, obviously. I think on the Usman fight, I think it'd be, it's going to be, unless it's decisive. I think Colby's going to have to push that pace and try to get some kind of knockdown, some kind of stoppage, some kind of something, right? Or else, I mean, if I were Colby, I wouldn't want that to go to a decision without having really established a clear win there. But I think in this, even though the first fight got stopped, I just think both Rose and Zhang are just tough, real tough. And I think that Zhang is going to play. If I were Zhang, think about it this way. You got to put yourself in the fighter's shoes, or try to. If I was Zhang, the one thing I would make sure I didn't do is get knocked out again. Right. Yeah. So if I'm Zhang, I'm thinking to myself, as long as I don't get knocked out, I'm going to win this fight. So I'm just going to, right. So I'm just going to play. I'm going to play defense. That doesn't mean that she's, whatever, but it's a different, you're not doing the Jose Aldo running in there with the chin, right? When you fight, if you fought McGregor again. So I think that's how that would go. That's what leans me more towards a decision, because they're both super tough, and I think that we're going to see a little more defense out of Zhang on that one. If I have to pick, this is like the hardest one to pick. If I have to pick, I'm going to say, Rose to retain, but I am super nervous about that pick, because I think that I think it's an absolute coin flip. I think it's a total coin flip. I think it's a great matchup. It had to happen anyway, but I think it's a great matchup. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Weili. With Zhang, I think if she look, I have total respect for Rose. There's no question.
You may talk me into that too. I mean, you may talk me into that too, because it's just
Rose. There's no doubt Rose can beat her again. There's no question about it. She's tall, she's bigger, she does have the distance. She knows. If you're somebody who comes towards Weili, she'll crush you. If you come at her, she'll just tear you up. But Rose doesn't do that. She stays at a distance. She's smarter than that. I still think that if Weili doesn't get caught, she's if she can get in there and she gets to her distance, she's a machine. She's such a machine.
What you just said, that's exactly how I see this. I think Weili has more horsepower and in some ways ability. I'm going to make a distinction on that, because that's not exactly what I mean. Right. And is more technical.
Yeah, definitely, I agree.
But technical in a certain way. I think that Rose has better ring generalship. I think Rose can fight with fluidity and at angles. I think Weili is a little bit more linear, and I think that Rose is more strategic and has a few more tricks up her upper sleeve, if you will. You know what I mean, right? And so,
I agree with all that. Yeah.
Rose reminds me of like Hopkins, Bernard Hopkins, right? I mean, Rose.
That's a good comparison.
See, right? I mean, even Hopkins, as he got older, maybe he was facing people with more power or different, but Hopkins can get you in traps, set things up, knew where he was at, and I think that's Rose. I think the mentality. That's the other thing. I think the mentality, right, of Rose is much better. I think if things get murky, if things gets tough, if they get into deep water, I like Rose's chances, right? So as it goes on, I think Rose will do better, but she's going to have to use those assets to evade the higher horsepower and the higher technical ability of Weili. So I would if I were her, I would. I mean, if I'm Rose, I'm pulling a Mayweather. I'm pulling a Hopkins. Right. I'm pulling her.
She does not want to get in there like trade around. She's got to stay.
No, you're not trying to do a firefight.
Too much counterpunch.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do against John. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So
if you did, who was it, Andrade or whatever, that kind of rushed her?
Right.
You saw how that worked.
Right.
Just tear you apart.
Well, yeah. No, you can't do that. Can't do that. So, okay. Hawker says, I like both. Guess room for Rose, though. I mean, yeah. I mean, listen, that's a great fight. That's a great fight. That's a great fight. Okay, last one. Let's talk about Gaethje, and then we'll move on. We'll do a separate one. We'll do it really is Hawker. It really is stacked. There's no doubt about it. Dana White and the team did a great job. This is a stack. Yeah. Well, same camp, right? With Usman. So Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. I think this is an easier pick, but I like Gaethje. I think Gaethje is, but with the major caveat, and I'll get to that in a second. Gaethje is bigger. Gaethje has great low kicks. Gaethje can take major punishment and dish it out. But Gaethje's also been a little bit exposed. I'll say that now. I mean, I think the rankings are exactly where they need to go. Number 2 versus number 4. It's kind of how I see it, right? I mean, I don't think either one of them is going to be too much. I mean, I think Charles Oliveira it's going to be tough to beat, right? But I think, and then let alone Habib's, protege or whatever. And I haven't followed that enough. But I know there's that conversation in the mix. I think Gaethje, I think Michael Chandler is a smarter fighter. I think but Michael Chandler is more limited. I think Michael Chandler has a lot of power and he also fights sort of linear and it has a great wrestling, but I think Michael Chandler has come in really good shape though. And I can see it. I can see it in his face, as a wrestler and stuff. But I just feel like Gaethje's just bigger, has more striking tools, is durable. I don't think Chandler's going to get him out in there with one shot, but I think Chandler's very live. So I like Gaethje for a decision or stoppage, but it wouldn't surprise me if Chandler stops him either. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how that's kind of how I see that too. It's almost like Patricio, Pitbull or something, and those two have had, it's like, you might be able to win a decision, but he can also take you out too. So I think I like Gaethje in this one though. I think this is of all the fights, I think this is the easier pick here. I like Gaethje, but I think Chandler's very live in this. Go ahead, Paul.
I'm not going to pick this one because I have not seen the other guy enough. I know Gaethje pretty well, but I have not seen the other guy enough to really make.
Well, he was a Bellator guy for a long time. Yeah. He was a Bellator guy for a long time, and then he flipped over. Okay,
I do think I know who he is. Yeah, I think I do because I'm not used to that kind of UFC. I think I do know who he is. But I haven't really thought about this fight that much. But I definitely like Gaethje brings to the table. But yeah, you're right. I do think I know who that dude is. I haven't thought about that. It is a stacked card. That's for sure.
It's a stacked card, and
it's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be fun, and I think if I were Chandler, I would try two different things. I would try to test it early because you might get lucky. You got that power. But then I would try to frustrate Gaethje and be smart about it. I think that's where you want to do it. When when Gaethje has problems, it's later. So that's kind of how I would approach that. But I just think that, Gaethje is very tough. He's been training with Usman, so he's been in there with someone that's really big. So I do like Gaethje in this one, but it's going to be very interesting. Anyway, that's what we think. Any last minute comments from the fans out there? Let us know real quick. We'll wrap this one up, and then we'll immediately start as soon as we can get it all set up, a new one. And we're going to be talking about Canelo versus Plant. So stay with us then. But anyway, thanks so much. I'm John D. Villarreal, the super genius and the 4-time national champion and the MMA expert. And we've Paula Villarreal here, the NBA expert. And that's how we see UFC 268. Great card, very stacked, very interesting. And we'll see what happens tomorrow night.